The Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical psychology for today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, narrated by David Ault. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. This is the fourth in our series of selections made by the members of the Facebook group. And these stories all come from A Veiled Gazelle. 4 friends. Once upon a time there was a Sufi who had decided to take up his abode in a certain city, where he was to establish his school. There were 3 men there who knew his work, and who had written to him expressing their desire to be of help to him in any way he wished. Accordingly, he visited them one by one. The first was one of the best-known scholars of the region, who said to him, "You are more than welcome, and I would like to be of any service to you and your work, and of course, I also want to study under you." The Sufi thanked him and said, "I would indeed like to teach you, but first of all we have preparatory work to do. A house cannot be lived in until it is built." "Command me," said the scholar. The Sufi continued, "Supposing that I become a person who is much discussed in this city, I would like you to become my critic, using your scholarly capacities, within reasonable limits, to put the logical case against my work, in an adequate and rational manner." "This is indeed a strange request," said the scholar, "far from the familiar methods of the ordinary thinker. But I have promised to serve you, and I shall attempt to do what you ask." The Sufi left him and went to see the second man, who was an influential and literate lawyer, also much respected in the area. The lawyer also expressed a wish to be of help and to be a disciple, and the Sufi said, "I would much like you to study under me, but first I will accept your offer to help in whatever way you can. I ask you to do the following. If and when you hear that I am being discussed in this city, you are to defend my name and work in as reasonable manner as you can, so that I have a logical and cool-headed supporter." "I would be glad to act in this capacity," said the merchant, "though I certainly did not realize that people of probity were ever in need of arranged support." Finally, the Sufi presented himself at the court of the third man, who happened to be the governor of the city. The governor expressed the desire to be a pupil and to be of any possible service to the Sufi, whom he respected so much, and the Sufi thanked him and put this proposal. "I would be glad to accept you as a pupil, but first of all I need you to act in a certain manner, so that things may proceed in accordance with their best potentiality. First, I would like you to employ me in a reasonably honourable capacity, within my capabilities, and so long as I discharge whatever responsibilities you give me adequately. But you should also, from time to time, in public, reproach or threaten me in such a way as to make it appear that I have no sinecure." The governor agreed to do this, remarking only that he was surprised that anyone would wish to be subjected to such a show of insecurity. The years passed, and in due time the Sufi gained many disciples and established his own business interests which supported him adequately. In the meantime he had, of course, become well known, and the scholar had expressed the arguments against his teachings, while the lawyer also played his part in putting the other side of the case. Finally, on the day that he was able to leave the service of the governor, the Sufi called the 3 other men to his house, and setting a meal before them, informed them all that he was now ready to accept them all as disciples. "While it is, of course, the prerogative of the master to teach in whatever way he finds best," said the scholar, "I would like to know why you asked one of us to support you, another to oppose you, and a third to threaten you." The Sufi said, "I am perfectly ready to enlighten you as to the reason for your various tasks. First, bear in mind that the outward must be firm before the inward can be made firm, and that those of you who were first in accepting me are last in being accepted into the teaching only because you will need the least actual time in your studies. I asked you, the scholar, to put the case against me, so that when the inevitable opposition arose, people, instead of mounting an ill-considered campaign against the way, would leave it to whoever was already adequately representing this point of view. Who better than the logician best able to express all aspects of a case? But since there are always people who are influenced by inimical propaganda, it was necessary that the other side of the matter should be advocated. For this role I chose a respected lawyer who has also a wide culture, to whom people would listen as much as they would to the scholar. Like a sponge absorbing surplus water, your mutual action was able to take up the excess controversy which, as always, is rooted in the desire of people to discuss. The argument was therefore safely contained in this manner, and the desires for discussion, which exists as a force in itself, were given appropriate expression. Since neither of you stood to gain repute by his victory, the debate was in the hands of people who would not twist it to personal ends. The desire to have a suitable post in the administration of this city was both because of the tradition of our way that those who pursue it should be gainfully employed, and also so that I could contribute towards the good of the people while being a person of adequate status in their eyes, something which a knowledge of their mentality makes necessary. The need to be threatened was based on the fact that in all administrative systems there are people who seek to bribe, suborn, or undermine public officials. If my position were thought to be insecure, these people would tend to leave me alone, counting on the likelihood that I would in any case be dismissed before long. Such people's plotting, too, would come to the ears of the governor, my employer, when they tried to influence him further against me, thus exposing their inner characteristics to him, enabling him to take any necessary action. In addition, any plotting which they did amongst themselves, seeking my downfall and their promotion, would divert their energies and not secretly afflict the state. We live in a world where people are quite unaware of the sources of their actions, and the human community is therefore influenced by unreasoning factors. To enlist them in a pattern of defense which shall help those who are trying to achieve good is at least as useful as searching them out and cutting them down, only to allow further weeds of a similar sort to grow up and to have to attack them again. Choosing the latter path, we would never make progress, but only at best remain where we were, clearing weeds and waiting for more to be cleared. Under such circumstances, how could a people make any progress towards the true destiny of man? Alim the Artful. From Badakhshan to Sarandib, from Marrakesh to Zanzibar, among the Bedouin and the Kochi, wherever the palm tree has been carried, and wherever it will not take root, you will hear of the fame of Alim the Artful. While there is still a sultan's palace upon this earth, the tales of Alim the Artful will be told and retold. Because to tell a tale of Alim is to bring the shadow of the celestial Humai bird, with honour and good health, upon the teller. And when there is no palace of a sultan, fortune and success will descend upon the hearers as well as the tellers of the tales of Alim, Alim the Artful, blessings upon his memory. How Alim bought an orchard. Now Alim was born in Pagman, the smiling land of the Afghans, where the fruit is so delicious that people have been advised not to eat it in case, travelling elsewhere, they might feel the unworthy sentiments of despair and dislike by contrast. Alim was in Pagman when he heard that there was an orchard for sale. The man who told him this said, "Alim, you are so cunning that it is said that you can make a demon believe that it is a fairy. You always help people. Will you go to the owner of the orchard and use your golden tongue to get it for me at a very low price?" And he pressed a sum of money into Alim's hand to pay for the orchard. Now this man was a greedy and unworthy individual, whom Alim decided was not fit to have the orchard. He went, nevertheless, to see the owner, and spent some time with him. Presently he came past the house of the greedy man, who said, "Alim, how did the matter fare?" Alim said, "The deal is done." And the other man jumped for joy. Alim continued, "I talked and talked and talked. The man at first wanted a high price, then I got it down. Then I got it down again and again. Then I made him reduce the price by a number of criticisms. Then I suggested that I might want it for the Khan, who, as you know, is a Syed, and so he reduced it again. And then I told him that I understood that there might be a new tax on orchards, and he went on in this vein for some time, while the greedy man became more and more excited, and, unable to contain himself, shouted, "How much did you get it for?" "Less than 1/10 of the price which you were offering, which was itself niggardly enough," said Alim. "My dear, dear friend, how can I ever thank you?" said the greedy man. "I must reward you with something like 0.5% of the amount." "You have already rewarded me enough," said Alim. "And how is that?" "Well, it was the memory of your frugality which kept me going through all that bargaining." "If you say so, I shall certainly not press you," said the greedy man. "In fact," said Alim, "I was so obsessed by your need to save money that I saved all your money in case you had second thoughts." "What do you mean, saved all my money?" "Quite simple. When the price had gone down almost to nothing for that very valuable orchard, I thought, my friend has now saved so much on this deal that it would only be poetic for him to save it all. And so I bought the orchard for myself. Here is your money back." How Alim became a thief. Alim the Artful travelled to Samarkand to find that matters were such that all the honest men were in jail and all the thieves had become rich, famous, and respected. Because of the corruptness of the Khan and the example of the court, the scholars were thieves, the merchants were thieves, the soldiers were thieves, and the officials were thieves. Of course, because of their dishonesty, they called themselves the elect. Alim said to himself, "If all the honest men are in jail, then I will become a thief. A thief who knows that he is one must surely be better than one who does not. Furthermore, has it not been said that in a rose garden be a rose, in a thicket be a thorn?" A thief, Alim thought, should start somewhere. Since I have the option, I should become thief to the Grand Khan. He went to the palace by dead of night and found the treasury. But there was nothing in it. The Khan knew his own people so well that he had hidden his wealth in a safe place. Search as he might, Alim the Artful could not find anything of value. So he returned to his caravanserai and kept his ears open. The merchants who regularly used the sarai talked among themselves of the collection of emeralds which the Khan was amassing. "Nobody knows where he keeps them," said the merchants to one another, "but he must keep them somewhere, and since nobody can be trusted here, they must be somewhere near him." "Quite right," said Alim to himself. Although he was artful, his maxim was, "Artfulness is not only used, it is learnt." So a few nights later, he was in the palace again, this time by the Grand Khan's bedside. Alim sat down on a stool near the Khan's head and started to stroke his forehead. Then he said, "Can you hear me, great Khan?" After a few repetitions, the Khan started to answer him. The Khan said, "What is it?" Alim said, where do you keep the collection of emeralds?" "Now, fellow," said the Khan, still in his sleep, "do you really expect me to tell that to a rude fellow whom I meet in the street, even if he is cooling my brow for me with a fan?" Assuming another voice, Alim said, "Away, ruffian! Can't you see that the Khan wants to talk to me about his emeralds?" But the Grand Khan was not to be drawn, and refused to say anything to Alim after that. The next night Alim tried again. Sitting beside the Khan, he said, "Your emeralds have been stolen." "Don't talk nonsense," said the Khan, but since Alim did not say any more, the thought rolled backwards and forwards in his mind in his sleep. While Alim sat there silently, the Khan called out to the Khanum in the adjoining room, "Malika, have you the emeralds safe?" The Khanum answered, "Yes, of course. They are under my bed, as they have always been." So the Khan, muttering, "Stupid oaf," slipped into a relieved and profound slumber once more. Alim the Artful waited until the Khanum's breathing showed that she was deeply asleep, and then he slipped into her room and took the emeralds. That night he gave them to an honest man whom he had met in the Sarai, who had escaped from prison. This man slipped from the city before it was searched by the furious Khan's men, who practically demolished every house looking for the treasure. The criers shouted the royal proclamation in the street that theft always leads to disgrace and destruction, and the emeralds must be returned forthwith. Since the people were muttering against the Khan and all his works, nobody noticed anything unusual about Alim's saying whenever he heard the criers, "Since theft has become the order of the day here, how can it be dishonourable?" Now the Khan called the wisest man in all the land to advise him how to catch the thief, even if he could not get his emeralds back. "We must make an example of him, otherwise he will become more and more audacious," said the Khan. He added, "You wisest men in all the land will, I am sure, provide a perfect trap. But just to hasten matters, I will have to put you in a dungeon until you work one out." How Alim proved that he was a doctor. The soldiers of the Khan, while this was going on, were searching the city for strangers, because the people had been intimidated for so long that it was the Khan's belief that the thief must be a foreigner of some kind. It was thus that they came upon Alim the Artful in his caravanserai, and, unsatisfied by his claim that he was a doctor, carried him before the Grand Khan. "Are you a doctor?" asked the Khan. "Indeed I am, a special kind of doctor," said Alim. "Then you must cure someone at once, or we'll put you to the torture to see whether you are the thief," said the Khan. "Like all doctors, I have my rules," said Alim, for he had hit upon a plan. "Abide by your rules, so long as you do not decline to treat a patient," said the Khan. "My rule is that I should be allowed to select the patient." "You may certainly do so, providing that there is quite obviously something wrong with him," said the Khan. "Nothing easier," said Alim. "Do you see that blind man over there? I elect to cure him." "That would indeed prove that you were a very special kind of doctor," said the Khan, "for he is my son-in-law, and has been blind in both eyes for 20 years. "Get ready for the cure," said Alim, advancing towards the patient. "Your Highness," murmured the Grand Vizier in alarm into the Khan's ear, "don't forget that your daughter is so ugly that you had to find a blind man to marry her. Now, if his sight should be restored—" "Enough," shouted the Khan. "Throw this man Alim out. He is no longer under suspicion." How Alim made his first disciple. Now Alim the Artful thought that he would lie low for a while, just in case the Khan had second thoughts about him, so he returned to his native glens. In Kabul he was munching dried white mulberries and nuts, having spent his last penny, when he thought he would try to collect some capital. He saw a man coming past the Chaikhana where he was sitting, and called out to him, "Friend, give me some money." "I haven't got any," said the man. "Well, give me something, a gift, or even a piece of advice." "I haven't either." "What is your name?" asked Alim. "I am called Chog the Thin," said the man. "Chog the Thin, you haven't much to lose. Would you like to become a disciple?" "What is your path?" "The Artful path. I am none other than Alim the Artful." "Well," said Chog the Thin, "I hadn't heard of your Tariqa before, but it may be a secret and therefore a powerful one. I'll join you." So Chog and Alim teamed up. How Alim taught Chog storytelling. Chog, who had a healthy appetite, said to Alim, "Master, I am your disciple now, and here we are in this tea-house without the means to buy a cup of tea. I know that the pupil should help to feed the master, and I am ready to earn something. But what does one do when the disciple is hungry?" "That is no problem," said Alim, "because when the disciple is hungry, the master finds a way to feed him. It is not for the disciple to propose that he should earn something when he is manifestly incapable of doing so. It is almost impiety and near to hypocrisy." And Alim addressed the other people in the tea-house, saying in the first words that came into his head, "Brothers, I could do with some chicken soup. I feel as much like it as a fox. Would you care to buy me some if I tell you how a sage changed the habits of a fox?" Some of the people agreed, and Alim began. The Story of the Fox and the Chickens. Roba the fox used to raid the hen-houses of a certain village every night. He was so sly and so efficient that the villagers could never catch him. Soon he was supplying all the other foxes for miles around with chickens, for he found that he could not stop catching chickens. At last the villagers decided to call in the local sage to help. They said, "Great sage, catch Roba the fox for us and stop him killing our chickens." The sage agreed. Using a special talisman which he had, he made the fox come to him. When the villagers saw that he had the fox, they cried, "Kill him, so that we shall not be worried any more by foxes." But the sage said, "I did not agree to kill the fox, only to stop him catching chickens." As they watched, the sage took off the dervish stone pendant emblem of his initiation and hung it by a thong around the fox's neck. Then he let it go. The villagers said, "How can such a thing prevent chickens from being caught by a fox?" The sage replied, "Not only men, but all of creation flee and conceal themselves from the truth. When the chickens, like mankind, glimpse this stone, they will hide themselves so well that even a fox will not be able to find them." And so it was. The fox, unable to catch any chickens after that, came to live with the sage, who shared his food with it, and used to call the fox Roba, my fellow dervish. With the money which they collected from the telling of this tale, Chog and Alim were able to while away a few days in the Afghan capital, as well as eating their fill of chicken pilau. "Come," said Alim to Chog, "it is time we started on our travels again, for Kabul is hot and dusty. Has it not been said that artfulness is movement, an artful man settled down becomes a deceitful man?" As they walked along the highway towards Jalalabad, they saw a strange-looking man coming towards them. "Let us stop him," said Alim, "and see what cunning we can exercise upon this apparition." When they were within a few paces of the stranger, Alim said, "May you never be tired, brother. What is your origin and what your destination, and what news do you bring?" The man heaved a great sigh and said in a halting manner, "May you be safe. I come from a country a year's walk to the west, and I have come to sit at the feet of the wise, for I have heard that the lands of the Persians and the Afghans are where the real wisdom of ancient times is still to be found." "Welcome, welcome, and welcome," said Alim. "There is indeed ancient wisdom here, but unfortunately most of those who seek it look only at the obvious. Would you like me to show you some?" The stranger, whose name was Yunus, accepted gratefully, and the three betook themselves to a caravanserai to discuss matters. Yunus explained that he was looking for a teacher who would tell him and show him wonders and evidences of the secret wisdom of the ancients. "It might cost you a great deal in money and otherwise," said Alim. "I am prepared for any cost," said Yunus, "for I am a rich man and have only adopted the dervish robe in order to appear more acceptable on the road." Yunus had heard of a great sage who had talking animals and could make inanimate objects obey his will. "Such things are plentiful, but they are in concealment," said Alim, "and you are lucky to have met us, for we will be able to shed some light upon the matter for you." The next morning Alim roused Chog before dawn and said to him, "Yunus is still asleep. Late last night I bought these twin goats from a merchant at this serai. You, as my disciple, must obey me in every particular, so make note of what I am saying. March ahead towards Jalalabad with one of these goats. At midday, halt and make tea. When we catch up with you, answer everything that I say with 'yes', unless I say, 'How did you know?' in which case you will answer, 'The goat told me.'" Chog repeated his instructions to make sure that he understood them. "And," added Alim, "take this piece of stick and keep it in your pocket. Give it to me when I ask you about the meal." Later in the morning, Alim woke Yunus and said, "We must be off, for I have affairs to attend to in Jalalabad." Alim unhitched the goat's lead from a post, said something into its ear, and gave it a smack. The goat careered off down the road. "What did you do?" asked Yunus. "I was sending a message," said Alim. As they walked down the road, Alim took the twin brother of the stick, which he had given Chog, and threw it into the air, saying, "Stick, do your work." Towards midday, they came upon Chog making a pot of tea by the roadside. Near him was tethered the twin goat. Alim said, "Did the goat bring you my message about saying your prayers in a certain form?" "Yes," said Chog. "How did you know to make tea at this precise moment?" "The goat told me," said Chog. Yunus the traveller was transported with delight. "A miracle! To think that I have blundered into companionship with people of the ancient wisdom," he cried. Alim looked at him. "Are you satisfied with the evidence which you have received?" he asked. Yes, more than satisfied," said Yunus, "and I beg you to accept me as a disciple, so that I may learn the wisdom." "You may ask me one question on the basis of which I will decide your suitability for spiritual studies," said Alim the Artful. "Well, there is the matter of the stick. When we were on the road, you said that you were sending a message, and you threw it into the air. What was that?" "I was sending a message to Chog about the feeding arrangements," said Alim. "But how?" "By an inanimate object. Don't you remember that the wise have talking animals and can make inanimate objects obey their will? Show him the message stick, Chog." Chog took the duplicate stick from his belt. Yunus almost swooned with delight. "Will you accept me? There is nothing that I want more in all the world," he said. "I am afraid that you have failed my test," said Alim, "but I can do more than accept you as a disciple. I can explain to you that you do not seek wisdom if you are attracted by trickery. The people whose reputations you are so impressed with are doing things which are incomprehensible to you, and so you think that they are miracles. Some, like us, are even charlatans. I studied for years under a Sufi master, and the first thing he taught me is what we are teaching you. Have no preconceptions and be humble. It is your arrogance which makes you think that you have found a master. And that was how Yunus learnt when Alim explained the tricks, how to seek. He gave the two a handsome present and set off on his travels again. How Alim met Moor the Slight. When Alim and Chog reached Jalalabad, they went to a caravanserai to hear the latest news and to refresh themselves. All the merchants there were agog because a spy had reported from Kabul that sacks of gold were being sent to their town for safekeeping, since there had been so much thievery in the capital city. "Ha!" said Alim, "it is just as well that we set out in advance. Otherwise they would be searching the city for strangers, in case thieves come after the gold." There had not been a theft in Jalalabad for decades, as the Khan there was peculiarly harsh with thieves of all kinds. "Nobody dares to steal anything here," said Chog, when he returned from a gossip-collecting expedition in the bazaars, "because the Khan is so very fierce." "What is the Khan like?" asked Alim. "The Khans here are usually good, but this one is terrible," said Chog. "Very well," said Alim. "We shall teach him a lesson." That very night Chog and Alim lingered near the citadel, waiting for the consignment of gold. Sure enough, it arrived in heavy bags on bullock carts. In order to show the soldiers from Kabul escorting the consignment that Jalalabad was safe and honest, there was just one man with a cudgel waiting to receive it. The Kabuli troops withdrew after getting a receipt, and Alim and Chog walked up to the man with the cudgel. "May you never be tired," said Alim. "May your shadow never grow less," replied the man. "What is your name?" asked Alim. "They call me Moor the Slight," said the man, who was a towering giant with much muscle and little brain. "But sometimes I am called Three Brains, because the walnut is called Four Brains in our language." "Do you know who I am?" asked Alim. "No, Aga," said Moor. "That's very fortunate. I must see that everyone is rewarded for keeping the secret so well," said Alim. "What secret?" asked Moor, scratching his head in puzzlement. "That I am from the highest authority," said Alim. "Not the captain of the guard?" asked Moor, who had hardly heard of anyone more important. "There is someone more significant even than the captain of the guard," said Alim, "and I am his immediate representative. The captain of the guard, compared with me, is like a mouse compared with the elephant." Moor was most impressed. Anyone who could speak like that about the captain of the guard must be a man of consequence. "Well, as the saying has it, first the food and then the speech," said Alim, "and so you'd better go and get the bullock carts, and tell the people who have them that it is very important that they be here soon, and if they are, we might consider hiring more of them for secret affairs like this." "Shall I go to the Khanly stables?" asked Moor. "No, you fool. This is a secret matter. Thieves might have their spies there. Go and get bullocks from someone who has never supplied them to the Khan before." So, in not much more time than it takes to tell, Moor went to a bullock cart hiring stables and brought back 2 carts. Moor had given him, as a deposit, all the remaining money from Yunus's gift. It was so much that the owner of the carts hoped that they would never be returned, so that he could take the huge deposit instead. At that moment a soldier of the Khan came up and asked why the 3 were so busy loading bags of gold onto a bullock cart. "Knock him out with your cudgel," said Alim to Moor. "Why?" asked Moor, "for surely he is on our side." "You yokels are all the same," said Alim. "Do as I say, and I will tell you afterwards." Moore knocked the soldier senseless, and Alim the Artful trussed him up, while the others got the rest of the gold into the carts. When all was ready, they started to move out of town. Alim said, "I told you that I would explain why you had to knock out the soldier, and I will, for I am a man of my word. Didn't you notice that he spoke with a slight accent? That was the Pugman way of talking. Now, in our valleys we are so tough that we have a special form of endearment which is reserved only for our fellow Pugmanis. This is to knock each other out in friendliness, just as you more effete people clap a friend on the shoulder. I asked you to do it because I was busy loading the gold. It is what we call the Pugman Salam." "You must be men indeed, you men of the mountains," said Moore, "and it must be for this reason that they have the saying, 'Curse the strongest man in the world, but do not say as much as good morning to a Pugmani.'" Presently they reached a field where they buried the gold. They found a Kochi nomad encampment where Alim was received like a lost brother. Alim said, "Brothers, tonight we feast," and he presented the bullocks to the Kochis, who tore them into strips in what seemed like a few seconds, and roasted the pieces over a fire. The Kochis told everyone's fortunes, and then Alim said, "Friends, if anyone comes looking for bullocks, I am sure that none of us will have heard of any." When dishonest is honest. Alim, an old friend, went one day with Latif on a journey. They travelled fast, and after several days they arrived at a village where Latif was received with great respect by the people. "People are waiting for you, Latif Baba," they said. Latif and Alim were taken to a house where Latif at once sat down and started to see the large number of people who had been waiting, some for months, until he arrived. He saw them one by one. Alim watched while Latif listened to what each person wanted. Some of them needed money, others work, others were artists, some were people who wanted to promote some kind of new idea, some were looking for special doctors who could treat difficult cases. To each and every one of them, Latif gave a letter addressed to some prince, noble, specialist, artisan, king or merchant, or to an official, or the mayor of a town, or to a mullah, or to some other person, important or otherwise. When Latif had seen all the people, over a week had passed. Then the villagers came and said, "Great Latif Baba, the gifts await you." Latif and Alim were taken to a warehouse which was full of every kind of commodity. There were silks and satins, robes of honour, bags of gold, sacks of rare and interesting items. There were plates of gold and hand-worked scarves, curiosities and foodstuffs, dried fruits and jewels, sweetmeats and arms, bowls of cut crystal, almost everything one could imagine, large and small, valuable and insignificant. Latif called upon the people who were waiting for the warehouse to be opened and asked them their business one by one. As each person left, Latif assigned him a gift from the warehouse until nothing was left. This all took up a further week. When that was finished, Latif said to Alim, "Come, we shall return to our other life." When they were on the road again, Alim said to Latif, "Good Latif, what was the meaning of what we have been through during the past fortnight? For I cannot understand it, however much I try." Latif laughed. "How could you understand something, and why should you try, if you do not know what went before?" Alim asked Latif to tell why and how he came to be in the position of a Baba, a sort of saint. Latif said, "Many years ago, when I was a disciple of a great man, he ordered me to travel to every country in the world. While I was there, I was to familiarize myself with the customs and problems and the people of importance and their needs and the peculiarities of each region. This exercise occupied me for 7 years. When it was over, I was able to make use of the vast store of knowledge which I had accumulated. Let me illustrate. Take the man who had invented a new kind of chair for people with one leg. Now, during my travels, I was in the land of the one-legged people. Hardly anyone else knows about it, but they are the people to buy the chair and to make that inventor happy and rich until the end of his days. So all I had to do was to tell him how to get there. And the same with the people who wanted donkeys or healing, or who needed education, or who realized that they were in the wrong position. Like a guide at a crossroads, I was able to point out the way. "And what was the meaning of the things in the warehouse?" asked Alim. "Quite simple. When people gained what they wanted in following my instructions, they naturally sent me something to give out to the less fortunate, and that was what I was doing during the second week of our stay at the village." Alim was amazed, for he realized that he knew hardly anything about the extraordinary Latif, while he had imagined that he knew all about him. "But why not settle down and become a holy man, a Baba?" he said. "In that way you would not have to be a thief." "Do I really have to remind you again," said Latif, "that I am a thief because the ordinary men of the world consider themselves to be honest, and not because they are honest or I am dishonest. A dishonest Baba, claiming respect because he knows where to get things or where to send people, is more of a thief than the man who takes what has been stolen in the first place and restores it to its rightful owner." This audio is made available by the Idries Shah Foundation and is copyright 2019. All rights reserved.